When thinking about integrating a high-definition surveillance system into an existing IT infrastructure, the elephant in the room is bandwidth and the impact on network resources. With only a modest percentage of bandwidth usually reserved for video surveillance, the last thing an IT manager wants is video footage, particularly if it's high definition, consuming network resources and affecting performance. So how can your IT department choose a surveillance system that ensures optimal performance without putting a strain on the network? Hello, and welcome to this live webcast titled Video Surveillance for IT, Maximum Image Quality, Minimum Bandwidth, brought to you by Avigilon and IDG. My name's Tom Schmidt, Managing Editor for IDG Strategic Marketing Services, and I'll be the moderator for this webcast. Joining me is Willem Ryan, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Avigilon. Willem oversees Avigilon's global product marketing strategy, and he has more than 10 years of experience in the video surveillance industry. Hello, Willem.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Good. Before we get started, a quick word about this webcast. We are live and interactive today. We welcome your questions and feedback and urge you to take part as much as possible. You may participate in two ways. First, this webcast features an audience poll question. When the poll question appears on your screen, click on the answer that seems right to you and press the submit button. We'll tally and discuss the results instantly. Second, you can ask questions of our speaker by typing them in the Q&A box on your screen and then pressing the submit button. We'll do our best to answer your questions during the Q&A segment of this webcast. If we can't answer your question then, we'll get back to you with an answer within a few days. Also, if you haven't already, please make sure to turn off your pop-up blockers. We've got a great session lined up for you today, so let's dive right in. Willem, I know that how IT handles surveillance is a very hot topic today. So tell us what you have in store for us.
Excellent. Thank you. Be happy to. So before I do get started, I want to thank everyone for joining on behalf of the entire Avigilon Corporation. Thanks for joining us today. We have a great topic for you. For our partners that are on the call today, we really want to thank you for your support for helping make 2013 and the first quarter of 2014 a huge success, and we're really looking forward to even more success with the rest of you this year. So for today, an excellent topic because it's timely in the sense that we're looking at the convergence of security and IT happening as we speak. And we want to go over and provide you some tools in terms of what the components of a video system are, some of the rise of high-definition factors that are going to play an important role in terms of how you determine to set up your network infrastructure. We'll look at some of the tools that are currently available for managing higher resolution, and then talk about a really unique technology that sets you apart in terms of providing the best image quality with the lowest impact to your bandwidth on your network. So we're really looking forward to going over, and let's start with an interesting fact. Three data points that I think you'll find pretty interesting. Three data points are as follows. 91% of organizations indicated IT managers are responsible for helping support surveillance deployments. And this is from a study in 2013. And this is a pretty dramatic number, up 39% from 3 years ago. And what it represents is a dramatic paradigm shift in terms of the way that video surveillance systems are both deployed and maintained and who the stakeholders are. Another data point from that study is that 47% of organizations indicate IT departments most responsible for surveillance. And so now we have a shift in the way that we design systems, who's designing the systems, and more importantly, maybe some of the important factors that are considered when designing a system. And so as I talk to you today, I want you to really take into effect some of the things that may have been important to a security manager that are now important to an IT manager, and how those things are bridging together. And if you look at the slide in front of you right now, that's kind of a snapshot of how it used to be in the past. We really had separate stakeholders. Of course, the IT manager managed all the traditional IT infrastructure and devices and software. And then the security manager was quite separate and managed all the security components, video, access control, analytics, fire, intrusion, etc. And their goals were quite different. The goal of a security manager of course, is to provide the best security from a video or access control, and their capabilities are looking for higher capabilities for identifying objects, identifying people, restricting access, while the IT manager has different goals in terms of the performance of the network. But with the rise of IP, and we'll talk a lot more about that in the coming slides, really those two worlds have come together. The IT manager and the security manager are working hand in hand. If they're not the same person anymore, they're going to be at least working hand in hand. And all of their goals now have to become part of the overall system objectives. And so we see all of the components of a video surveillance system, of access control, fire intrusion, now becoming part of the world of the IT manager. And one thing to really consider is that not only should they be integrated, but when you're looking at designing a system, the components of that video system that you may be selecting, are they designed to work properly within an IT environment? Are they designed to provide the most efficient operation within an IT environment while at the same time accomplishing the security needs that you're looking for? So let's break it down a little bit and look at the different components of a video surveillance system and how that relates to an IT environment as well. So if you're new to this, you of course know that a video surveillance system starts with an image, right? The whole idea of capturing good images has to start with a camera. Now, what I've presented here is the fact that there is, of course, IP cameras on there, and if we're IT, we're talking about digital IP cameras. However, as we'll look at a stat in a few slides, analog cameras still exist, and there's still a huge portion of the industry that has analog cameras. And so if you're ever in a situation where you have a legacy system of analog cameras, you will need to bring that into your IT infrastructure via analog video encoders. Now, either the analog camera through the encoder or the IP camera are going to be recorded onto a server. We usually call this network video recorders. And within those network video recorders are going to house the video management system. This video management system is sort of the gateway that manages all your video and any of the alarms that come in as well. And so this is now distributed over your local area network. Your users on the clients, of course, are going to access both live and recorded video. And then you will also have users that are remote, and they're going to be accessing those video, that video footage via remote connections on their PCs or their mobile devices. And so all of this is part of the ecosystem that you need to consider for video surveillance. Now, kind of some of the auxiliary stuff that we should also consider is you may also have access control. And one of the things we've seen in the industry this past few years is a more and more integration capabilities between access control and video. Of course, you want to verify as people enter or exit your facility, and video provides the ability to give you video verification, identify who's been coming in through your facility, and having that integrated tightly with your access control system is very important. And then finally, video analytics has become a very popular capability within video. And video analytics basically takes all of that video information, provides capabilities to distinguish between humans and other objects, and then provides alerts for real-time crime prevention and capabilities to analyze what's going on in your scene automatically. So all of this resides within your IT infrastructure, and it needs to be able to play within some of the components of your IT infrastructure that you've already put together. So I wanted to talk to you about some of the factors that are playing within our industry that are really going to impact how your video system is going to play nicely on your IT infrastructure. And the main component of that is the rise of high-definition video. And before I go on and explain that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tom for our first poll question.
Great. Thanks, Willem. As Willem said, we're going to take a little break, and because it's time for our first audience poll question. And the question is, let's tee that up. Does your organization currently have a high-definition surveillance system in place? And your choices are A, yes, an HD system, B, yes, an HD and analog hybrid system, C, no, we have an analog system, D, no system at all, E, I'm not sure. You can go ahead and click on the answer that seems right for you and press the submit button. We'll tally the results in just a few moments. Well, while we're waiting, I'm curious. Any hunches about how voting will go? What do you think where are most companies when it comes to high-def surveillance today?
Well, I think if I could predict from what I have seen in the industry, there's going to be a good combination of a hybrid system, especially if they've had a video surveillance system there before. There'll be a transition from an analog or a standard def IP to an HD. If it's new, if it's a new system, then many people now see the value, of course, of moving to high definition and may go straight to high definition.
Go right to it. Yep.
Yeah, but I think we're going to see an interesting combination of hybrid.
All righty. Let's see how the vote comes out. Oh, interesting. Yes, an HD system in place, 34.3%. As you said, Willem, there's a hybrid system at 42.6%. No, just an analog system, 11.8%. No system at all, 9.5%. Not sure, about 1.7%. Interesting. Some of your thoughts here.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of shows sort of the depending on the application, depending on the user and what their needs are, they're going to have a different types of deployment, and really it's about a system that's flexible to that. As the business transitions, as the business needs and security needs grow, a system that can accommodate that, is flexible to that, is very important. So that's really good information, and thanks for everyone for their participation there.
Great. Good points. Back to you.
All right. So as your own results have demonstrated, there is a move towards IP. And some of the pundits years back had predicted the split between IP and analog would have tipped over maybe a few years ago. But we obviously now see that split already happen. So we're basically at a point where there's over 50% of all surveillance systems being deployed, all cameras being deployed, are IP or digital, and the rest are analog. But as you can see, there's still a quite significant share of analog out in the market. But that's quickly becoming part of an IP system, as we saw earlier, through video encoders. So another interesting data point for you to consider is the fact that within IP deployment, we see a huge disparity in terms of megapixel resolution and standard resolution being deployed over the next few years. And you can see there by the CAGR, the standard resolution is declining by a rate of 44%, where we're seeing an increase of 40% in megapixel resolution. So what it's telling you is that users and integrators and partners are seeing the benefit of megapixel resolution and high definition in order to do what they're really trying to do within a security surveillance system, which is provide the best evidence possible. So with this increase in resolution and performance, we need to consider some of the factors of why people are moving to high resolution. And I really want to speak to some of the IT people here, because your job may be more about the network, but there are some really important considerations from a security manager standpoint of why we're moving to high resolution and how that's going to impact your network. So from a business standpoint, a security manager really needs to do a bunch of different things. They need to decrease false liability claims. They want broader coverage with fewer cameras. Of course, they're mandated to safeguard employee customers and deter criminals. And a higher resolution imaging really provides the ability to do that at a much more efficient and effective way. And so because we're moving towards that, we have to look practically at what standard resolution used to be and what the benefits are of high resolution. So you have a consideration from a security manager's point of view of why they want to move to high resolution. So it really came down to a choice between field of view. When you were using standard resolution, you had to choose either a wide field of view so you can have the best coverage, and of course you'd use a proper lens for that, or a more telephoto or zoomed in field of view so you can get details. And you had to choose wisely because you had to set up one camera with a lens for wide and one camera with a lens for zoomed in more details. So here's an image that I want you to consider. We're going to look at a few slides here, and I want you to consider the field of view and the capabilities and the differences between high resolution and standard. So in this image, we have a very wide field of view. We're looking at the stands of a European football stadium. And so this happens to be a 16 megapixel camera, just for your reference. 16 million pixels within that image. So in theory, you could probably get the same field of view with a standard definition camera. You just need a really wide lens, and you'd get more or less the same type of image with standard resolution. Now let's zoom in a little bit and have a look within the stands. And so there's a beautiful image of some of the people sitting there. I can see their faces clearly and the details of their clothing. And I could probably get this, again, fairly similarly with standard definition as long as I put in a powerful telephoto or zoom lens. The difference comes in, and this is really the kicker of why people want to move to high resolution, is again, you needed to choose one or the other. So if I use the wide-angle lens in standard definition and then I try to digitally zoom in, as which I'm showing you here, of course that image falls apart and I lose all of the detail that I wanted in terms of looking at the details of these people sitting in the stands, and it gets blurry because we have a lack of pixels on target. Now, the benefit of using high resolution is that I have that simultaneous ability to have wide coverage as well as digitally zoom in and get the details I need. And this is huge because it's what we call in the industry wide area persistent stare. You have the ability to have situational awareness by covering a wide area like this football stand, but at the same time I can bring up zoomed in portions of that image and get all the details that I need for evidentiary purposes. And this is really the deciding factor of why our industry is moving towards high resolution, and why perhaps if you're an IT manager working with a security manager, why they're going to come to you and say, I need higher resolution cameras deployed in our system. So if you're convinced and you say, yes, all right, high resolution, I see that's what we need, and now what? How do I manage this information? And so this is just kind of a comical representation of that, is that by adding high resolution, I'm adding more information into your data pool. And depending on the size of your network pipe, that could be an issue. Putting more information through a limited pipe is going to be detrimental in terms of the overall performance of your network. And of course, you may be able to solve that by adding more throughput in terms of your network performance. And that's a good thing. However, there's still going to be some challenges you may face in terms of getting that information to different parts of your network depending on usage. And that first component that we need to look at is the fact that corporations in most, if not all industries, have some portion of their workforce connecting remotely or via mobile devices. And this also represents a paradigm shift within our industry, and I guess in any network infrastructure, that we see more and more people having to access video and information, of course, remotely. And if you consider then trying to move that information in high resolution, that becomes also a challenge. Specifically in the security industry, we see a trend for facility security staff moving towards tablets for viewing live and recorded footage and collaborating with other staff members for incident investigation via mobile devices. And security directors for large corporations often have to manage sites both nationally and globally, and must be able to connect, view, and manage the site at a moment's notice, regardless of the location, regardless of the connection speed, or regardless of the device that they're actually using. So if you're doing that and that's changing the way that you're accessing information, you have to manage this increase in bandwidth in a very select way. So let's go over a few ways that you can do that, kind of a normal way that you may be able to address an increase in bandwidth due to higher resolution. So some of the ways that you can address it is, for example, selecting the right compression format. Compression typically today is in the H.264 compression standard. You also have MJPEG standard, and really you can choose between your compression format in order to address the bandwidth issue. And basically, for example, sometimes on mobile devices, you may only stream an MJPEG image that refreshes, for example, every minute in order to save yourself the bandwidth and the storage requirements. And so that's one way to address it. You can also use the appropriate resolution based on what the need is for the application. And what I mean by that is you don't always need a 16 megapixel camera for every image that you're looking at within your facility. You can go lower resolution or higher resolution as appropriate. The other thing to consider is a couple of points down, I talk about multi-streaming, is that you can actually stream different resolutions from the same camera, a lower resolution, for example, for live and a higher resolution for recording, or vice versa, depending on your needs, in order to compensate for the increase in bandwidth in your system. The other way is you can reduce frames per second. Frames per second or images per second, the faster the frames per second, of course, the greater the ability is to capture moving objects. And so depending on your application, traffic or people moving within a facility, frames per second can become very important in order to capture every single important event as it happens. But by reducing the frames per second, you have the ability then to reduce the amount of information that's being transmitted over your network and recorded. Other one that we can look at is recording only on motion. So of course, instead of just streaming everything over your network, you only record when something actually happens. And video analytics actually has helped with that component as well. And then finally, there's transcoding, which I'll go into depth in a few slides. So based on that, if we look at those methods for managing bandwidth, they're all tried and tested and true. However, the one thing you need to consider is that with all of those, you need to find a compromise between the image quality and the bandwidth consumption that you're actually going to affect on your network. So again, I want to go back to the fact that we're changing the paradigm in terms of IT and security managers. A security manager, of course, is all about the image quality, is all about the evidence, where an IT manager, you may be looking more for the performance on your network. And so you need to find that balance, and that may not always be in harmony, and you have to make that choice with the methods that we just talked about. So let's look at another method in terms of managing that bandwidth that doesn't require you to make that compromise. And the trend in the industry is now to intelligently manage how much actual video information is sent from the server to the user client, and not only how much is sent, but when. And this is where Avigilon has really set the standard in terms of the video surveillance and high definition in the industry with a technology called high definition stream management. And what high definition stream management, or HDSM, it's a unique technology that intelligently manages video information between the server and the client. And it really is developed to address all the challenges that I talked about in terms of image quality, bandwidth, in terms of scalability. And what it does is it drastically reduces the server-client bandwidth requirements so that it actually makes the optimal use of your client computing resources, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and so that you can actually scale more efficiently, meaning add cameras as you grow with your business, as well as increase camera resolution. So you feel a lot more comfortable adding more resolution to get the better evidence where you're not going to impact your network as dramatically. So let's look a little bit about how it works. So for this illustration, we have 16 megapixel, and we've illustrated it by dividing it into distinct areas. And the way that it works is when a user zooms into an area for more detail, in this case we're zooming into the area where there are some vehicles and looking at license plates and other vehicle details, only that portion of the image is transmitted between the server and the client. So again, this is a 16 megapixel camera. I've divided it into distinct areas, in this case 12. And so 1/12 of the total resolution is actually sent from the server to the client. So not only does this drastically reduce the bandwidth between the server and the client, it actually reduces the required decoding resources. And that enables improved system performance, responsiveness, and overall user experience. And that's what I talked about earlier in terms of using or optimizing your current computing resources. Because what it does, it doesn't require you to use supercomputers, super servers in order to decode all this increase in resolution. The other thing I'm illustrating here is that there's layers of images. So you see sort of on the left-hand side 3 layers. And what HDSM does is it progressively uses lower resolutions. So for example, if you were to display the full field of view, in this case of the 16 megapixel camera, on more than likely your 1080p or 2 megapixel monitor that you have in front of you, you would receive an intermediate resolution because you only need 2 megapixel worth of data. And then when the camera is being viewed, for example, in multiple camera displays, so let's say 1 of 9 cameras in a 3x3 grid, only the lowest resolution is used. So both in those scenarios, you're really never decoding the full 16 megapixel worth of resolution. Only when you zoom in, only when the user comes to look at the more detail within the image, is that information sent. And of course, they get the resolution that they need at the time that they need it. And this is a very distinct technology. Now, there has been some questions about high-definition stream management versus transcoding. And for those of you in the IT world, transcoding isn't really new to you, but it's not an element of HDSM technology. Transcoding is a direct conversion from one encoding to another, and usually you want to do that when the format isn't the same or you have limited storage capacity. Although if you really look at it, I think what we do mostly in the security industry is transrating, very similar. It's just the distinction is that the files are coded to a lower bit rate without actually changing video formats, and that's pretty much what we do within the security industry. And it's very common between video management servers and an HTML or mobile device client. It helps to transmit that video and compress that video between mobile devices. And so I wanted to talk about transcoding because it's a little bit different consideration, and if you ever come across it as a way of dealing with it, there's a few things that you need to keep in mind. One thing is that transcoding is a very process-intensive service. And what I mean by that is it really becomes evident when you're trying to view transcoded video remotely on a mobile device and you have to wait because it's buffering, for example. And so you press pause and it reveals more detail and you wait for it to catch up. But this isn't really a good user experience. And HDSM technology completely avoids this challenge. And the other thing to keep in mind is transcoding is enabled in a couple different ways. One, it shares CPU resources with other software services. And of course, inevitably, this can lead to performance limitations depending on how much resources is available. And HDSM, at the core of the technology with our Avigilon Control Center software, does not monopolize resources. So you never really have to worry about having to wait for the service to be available. And the other way to deal with transcoding is, of course, deal with it from dedicated hardware. And this dramatically improves performance. The only thing is, again, we talk about scalability. It's difficult and expensive to scale to more medium and large camera deployments. So you would have to deploy several transcoding hardware devices in order to accommodate more cameras, higher resolution as you grow your business. And so, again, this is not necessarily a best way of dealing with scalability and high resolution. So I want to just to explain some of the additional benefits of HDSM for the rest of your system. Again, HDSM technology will increase the efficiency of your video stream management across the network without increasing the requirement for network infrastructure. So example I gave earlier is that you don't need hardware, network hardware with additional processing power. In fact, the processing power required for an H.264 camera with HDSM is really reduced compared to standard stream management and even previous versions of HDSM in the past. And therefore, what that means to you is that you can use standard equipment, standard hardware, of course, using Avigilon Control Center and Avigilon cameras that will allow you to leverage your investment in your network already. And so this, I think, is a great ability for you to grow with and transition from your current system and see the benefits of higher resolution already. So to close, again, in summary, I wanted to leave you with that figure that we opened up with. 91% of organizations indicated IT managers are responsible for helping support surveillance deployments. Again, this marks a paradigm shift in our industry. It shows that there is a massive and rapid convergence of security and IT. And what's really driving that is the adoption of IP. And furthermore, what's driving the adoption of IP even quicker now is the rise of high definition within the video surveillance industry. So with that, you have to consider how you're going to manage the higher resolution within your network. And there are several ways of doing that. We discussed that. And the Avigilon high-definition stream management technology is a unique technology that really allows you as an IT manager to limit the bandwidth impact on your network, while at the same time accommodating and accomplishing the goals of the security manager for the highest definition, highest quality image possible within the surveillance system. And putting those things together are really going to help you accomplish the goals as you move towards more and more video surveillance on your system. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us, and I'm going to turn it back to our moderator, and we're going to have an opportunity for some questions.
Exactly right. Thanks, Willem. Terrific overview. That is a challenge, finding the balance between image quality and bandwidth. So now it is time for the audience Q&A segment of our webcast. We have a good turnout, and I think we have a number of interesting questions in the queue. Let's see. Let me pull up the first one. What are some of the factors to consider when transitioning from an analog to an IP video system? I think that's probably on a lot of people's minds, Willem.
Yeah, I think so. And as we saw in the poll results with the hybrid, the amount of hybrid systems out there, it's something that we should talk about. And so the first thing that we talked about earlier in the presentation was the fact that you can bring that analog system onto your network via encoders. And so that's the first thing I would say to you, is that you can leverage your current investment of analog cameras. You don't have to throw those away. And I would use the video encoders to bring it into a digital system. And then as you're setting up and kind of designing your system, I would look at where are critical points that higher definition imaging would improve your process of security. So are there areas where you're just not getting enough detail, like parking lots and you need license plates? Or entryways or hallways where you need to get a little bit more details of faces, or just perhaps there's areas where you want some broad coverage with fewer cameras and higher resolution, as we looked at with that demonstration in the European soccer application. So that's the first thing I would consider, is that where do I need to start adding higher resolution? Keep your analog cameras where they're providing the performance that you need. And where I've seen it in the industry is as sort of new areas within your facility are coming online, you make sure that those are becoming HD and IP cameras, and then you slowly go back retroactively and switch out the analog cameras in your facility. Now, one of the things to consider, of course, is just the ability of the encoder to process that analog video. Not all encoders are made equal, and so the performance in terms of the encoding and transmission of even analog video is important. So look at the specs, test out the encoder performance, and see how that actually works within your system. Encoders are continuing to improve in performance as well as come down in price, so there's some really good options out there, including from Avigilon.
Great, great. Again, I encourage our audience to submit a question. Willem has some terrific information to share with us today, so ask what's on your mind. Let me pull up the next one. How easy is it to scale up or down with a surveillance system?
Well, that is a really tough question, because it really comes down to what we talked about earlier, was the amount of information, the resolution. So in the past, in analog systems, it's very easy to scale because there was hardly any impact in terms of the network. It was a closed, CCTV closed system. So with IP, as you expand, now you have huge impact in terms of access to that video. So this is exactly what we're talking about in terms of a technology that addresses the ability to scale. And HDSM is unique in that way because it allows you truly to both scale in camera count. So let's say you had, you're just going to expand the amount of 2 megapixel cameras out there, but you want to increase that dramatically. For example, replace a bunch of analog cameras that you had with 2 megapixel. Now, the way that we describe some of the sort of the common bandwidth management methods don't necessarily address scalability, because as you bring more cameras online, you then have to truly compromise on image quality in order to scale it and keep your performance in your network and maintain that. Whereas HDSM allows you to both increase the camera count and the resolution as required, while allowing your resources to remain intact. And that's really what it comes down to. You have to look at the compromise between increased camera count, increased resolution, and how that, as well as actually access to it from your users. Are you having more users access the video? Are they accessing the video remotely versus on the local area network? How much, what is your bandwidth connection outside of the local area network? Those things are all going to factor in tremendously into the scalability of your system. So we really encourage for our partners and customers to contact our sales engineer team, our design team, that really goes over all the details of that and looks at the architecture of your system in order to kind of find all the pain points and how we can address that with our technology.
Great, great. We're speaking with Willem Ryan of Avigilon today, who's taking your questions. Here's one, Willem. So is HDSM, high definition stream management, exclusive to Avigilon?
High definition stream management is an Avigilon technology that runs on the Avigilon Control Center video management system. And so in that sense, it's part of our ecosystem from our end-to-end solution. And we leverage that through the cameras that are connected into our system, because we control the quality, we control the performance, and it's really a differentiation technology from the Avigilon video management system to any other video management system out there. And one thing I want to say is the thing that makes Avigilon Control Center and really the end-to-end solution from Avigilon unique in the industry is we've always been dealing with high-definition imaging. That is, we're 100% high-definition imaging. And so when we built our system from the ground up, it was always within mind, how can we increase resolution? How can we increase imaging performance within an ecosystem that controls that? And whereas a lot of other systems out there, they have great features, great products, but they were built in either the analog days, moving towards IP, and then, of course, within the standard definition area of IP, and struggle a little bit more in terms of dealing with higher resolution.
Okay, let's see. I think we have time for a couple more. one of our viewers is asking, how is HDSM different from setting up multiple streams?
Yes, multi-streaming is very, very common within the industry, and it's quite different because, again, as I talked about, it's the amount of information that's being sent. So with multi-streaming, you can set up a particular resolution on one stream and another resolution on another stream. And you can, depending on the manufacturer, you can from 2 to 4 streams, and you can set up quite a bit of flexibility there. However, you still have to decode the entire resolution or the entire amount of resolution on the client side. So whether or not you're sending out multiple streams and at different resolutions, the decoding on both the server and the client side is happening at full resolution. So what HDSM does uniquely, it only sends the portion of the image. It records all of the different portions, but it only sends from the server to the client what the user actually needs. The user does not need to decode, even if it's 5 megapixel, 8 megapixel worth of resolution, if they're only zooming into a portion of the image. And this is a huge factor because what ends up happening, even if you have the greatest network performance, you have a huge network pipe that allows you to transmit a lot of data over it, what ends up happening is the performance on the client side is degraded because the client and whatever device that they're using has to decode, even with multi-streaming, the entire image. And you see this a lot in systems where as you increase the resolution, when they're looking on their mobile device or their laptop, you get a lot of that spinning bar or the system as it waits to decode all of that information, or you get choppy video, you lose frames. And this is really the issue and the difference between HDSM and any other kind of stream management technology.
Great. These are all great questions. I think we have time for one last one. What are some different compression formats I should be aware of as related to surveillance?
The surveillance industry, in terms of compression formats, has used really quite a bit of different compression. Their H.264 currently is the most popular and is widely used, and there's a reason for that. I mean, most hardware out there outside of the surveillance industry uses some kind of decoding within the H.264 format. And so H.264, there's different variations of that, but H.264 is the most common. There, of course, within that standard, the JPEG standard is quite common, and you'll see that, again, typically used for remote connections. As refresh, you'll send JPEG images to mobile devices or even to websites, and then just get refresh. And this really drastically reduces your overall file size and bit rate, but it's not live streaming videos. It just still captures at that point. Avigilon also used JPEG 2000 for a number of years, and JPEG 2000 is a fantastic compression technology that was mostly used within the medical imaging, movie production, and really gives the highest quality in terms of compression and video. However, the file sizes are typically a lot larger than H.264, and so you will see JPEG 2000 out there as well. But I think really in the end it comes down to the performance that you require on your network, and varying compressions can achieve that. And again, we just want to look at the balance between image quality and your network performance. So that's something to always keep in mind.
Got it. Thanks, Willem. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's live interactive webcast. I want to give a big thanks to our speaker, Willem Ryan, for his expertise and insights. And thanks especially to you, our listeners, for tuning in. Please remember to check out the additional resources tab of your player for links to some valuable Avigilon resources. In addition, all attendees will receive a follow-up email in the next day or two with a link to the recording of the webcast. For Avigilon and IDG, I'm Tom Schmidt.